Hey there, film enthusiasts. Welcome back to my Cinematic Exploration Corner. In this segment, I'm delving into the lives and careers of three iconic directors who share more than just their heritage. Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, and Michael Cimino were three filmmakers who rose to fame during a period that nurtured risks and innovation, only to face a colossal failure that forced them to reposition themselves in an industry that had changed completely. Starting with this episode, I'll be talking about another master of the craft, Martin Scorsese, the director's ebb and flow-filled years, and how the king of comedy set the acclaimed director on a life-changing trajectory. So grab your popcorn, settle in, and join me as I unravel the stories of three directors who faced the highs and lows of the industry, showcasing the grit and determination that defines true cinematic visionaries.
I know I'd go from rags to riches.
Whilst the period lasting between 1967 and 1972 laid the groundwork for New Hollywood's rebellion against traditional studio practices and saw the rise of auteurism and directorial control, the following 5 years were pivotal to cementing the era's reputation. The movement reached its peak in terms of creativity and commercial success and effectively entered its second wave, which lasted between 1972 and 1977, with Hollywood majors embracing and investing in riskier, artistically driven ventures, the creation of the blockbuster, and most importantly, an expansion of themes and styles covered by film. If the first wave auteurs were all about creating a unique and innovative approach to storytelling, the pivotal players from the second wave were more focused on both the personal side of filmmaking and continuing to push the boundaries of what was acceptable to show. Mike Nichols and Robert Altman pushed the envelope when it comes to the language that could be used on screen and the topics that could be addressed. The directors who joined the cultural movement in the post-Godfather era were more interested in telling stories from the environments they grew up in, the then current domestic brand of violence, and how cinema, as a very distinctive art form, could explore said violence. During this period dominated by filmmaker autonomy, innovative storytelling, and social realism, prominent names like Brian De Palma, George Lucas, Terrence Malick, Steven Spielberg, and Martin Scorsese became household names.
I know I'd go from rags to riches. If you would only say.
After briefly considering priesthood and even attending seminary, Martin Scorsese enrolled in NYU, where he earned a BA in English and a Master's of Fine Arts in Film in 1968. He directed his first movie, Who's That Knocking at My Door, whilst he was studying. The movie marked the first of many collaborations between the Italian-American director and the actor Harvey Keitel. Just like his paisan Francis Ford Coppola, Scorsese also got an unofficial postgraduate education in the Corman School of Cinematic Something or Other, when the producer picked Scorsese to direct the period gangster movie Boxcar Bertha. The exploration title opened to mediocre reviews, but performed decently at the box office. After seeing a rough cut of the movie, director John Cassavetes urged Scorsese to find his real voice, feeling that the movie was beneath the director's capabilities and wasn't something Scorsese had poured his heart and soul into. These comments were critical in shaping Scorsese's guiding principle for filmmaking: the most personal is the most creative. The first materialization of this mantra happened a year later in 1973 with Mean Streets. The movie reunited Scorsese with Keitel and marked the first collaboration between the Italian-American director and actor Robert De Niro, a professional relationship that would last for 6 decades. Shot in the documentary style and featuring top-notch acting and storytelling, the New York-based crime drama provided a blueprint that would define Martin Scorsese's filmmaking style: the exploration of tension between Catholic guilt and the allure of sin, the motifs of revenge and redemption, the grim settings, and the gritty violent sequences are just some of the aspects found in the director's filmography that were seen here for the first time. Another revolutionary element present in this 1973 classic is the usage of a contemporary song-based soundtrack. Featuring distinct genres such as blues, pop, doo-wop, and rock tracks, Mean Streets looked and sounded different from anything done before. The movie was an instant hit when it debuted at the New York Film Festival, only being overshadowed by another Americana-infused crime drama, Terrence Malick's Badlands. When released to general audiences, the movie made over 6 times its original budget, and Scorsese was now the talk of the town.
I know I'd go from rags to riches
if there were any doubts that Martin Scorsese was the hottest new talent in town, 1974 removed him. While shooting The Exorcist, Ellen Burstyn came across Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and both the actress and Warner Brothers, the studio behind William Friedkin's blockbuster, were keen to adapt. Burstyn contacted Francis Ford Coppola and asked him who'd he'd recommend to helm the project. Coppola, who had offered the directorial duties of the then upcoming The Godfather Part 2 to Martin Scorsese, pointed her in the direction of the Mean Streets filmmaker. Released in 1974, the dramedy was an instant hit, earning $18 million on a budget of $2 million. The movie became the first Scorsese picture to be nominated for an Academy Award, earning Ellen Burstyn a win in the Best Leading Actress category. In hindsight, Alice appears to be an anomaly in the director's filmography. But despite having a plot focused on a female lead, the movie still includes many of the Scorseseisms and showcases the director's innate ability to tackle different genres. The director forged long-lasting relationships with elite names of the new Hollywood movement, but he also rubbed shoulders with upcoming peers such as Brian De Palma. In fact, De Palma can be credited as an instrumental person in Scorsese's rise to fame. Not only did the Carrie director introduce Martin Scorsese to Robert De Niro, who had starred in several of De Palma's earlier productions, but also connected his fellow Italian-American peer to Paul Schrader, who penned the script that solidified the director's role in the higher echelons of Hollywood. Taxi Driver, one of the first titles to showcase the traumatic experiences of Vietnam veterans and the arduous path of being reintegrated into society, Taxi Driver found Martin Scorsese returning to familiar turf, the gritty, godless streets of 1970s New York. The political overtone of the film resonated with audiences that were just starting to recover from the Watergate scandal and the outcome of the unwinnable war. Viewers couldn't remain indifferent to all the themes embodied by Robert De Niro's Travis Bickle. Bickle remains one of the most complex and well-built characters to ever grace the big screen. As a war veteran, the lead has a unique sense of purpose and a mission: to restore the American way. He is a lone wolf seeking to right the wrongs of the world whilst maintaining a distance from the environments that surround him. Taxi Driver was another home run for the director, a critical and commercial success, earning $29 million on a $2 million budget. It was nominated for Best Picture after earning Scorsese the coveted Palme d'Or at the 1976 Cannes Film Festival. It was around this time that a pattern around the industry's perception of Scorsese started to emerge. The critics loved him. Audiences certainly enjoyed his style. But when it came to studios and the Academy, that's a whole different story. Despite the commercial success of his titles, Martin Scorsese struggled to get his projects greenlit and encountered resistance from studio executives who were often wary of his uncompromising vision and edgy subject matters. His wide-release, full-feature debut in 1973 had to be financed independently, and Columbia Pictures was adamant about letting the director keep creative control over the Taxi Driver production, particularly due to the film's violent climax. The director's success with European award bodies was evident. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore won the BAFTA for Best Picture and was nominated for the Palme d'Or in 1974. The director also nabbed 2 Best Director nominations for both Alice and Taxi Driver, and won big in France in 1976. But unlike his counterpart Francis Ford Coppola, he was virtually ignored by the major award committees in his native country. Both titles secured major nominations, but none for Martin Scorsese. After all, he was a troubled man in real life, and no amount of talent could overcome those flaws. 1976 also found a director helming a massive non-feature film project. He had been recruited by the band's lead guitar player Robbie Robertson to film the group's farewell concert in San Francisco in October 1976. The result was The Last Waltz, which would get a theatrical release 2 years later in 1978.
I know I'd go from rags to riches if you would.
Awards be damned, for in 1976, Martin Scorsese was the de facto king of filmmaking this side of New York City. But like so many before him and after, the director became a victim of his own success. How does one follow a complex and extremely well-crafted achievement of the caliber of Taxi Driver? Known for his appetite to push boundaries, Martin Scorsese took on an ongoing industry trend at the time: period revisionism. For all its novelty, international inspiration, and innovative filmmaking styles, directors in the 1970s often liked to revisit and pay tribute to the classic golden age of Hollywood titles they grew up watching. Peter Bogdanovich favored the influence of screwball comedy. Brian De Palma was taken by Hitchcock's 1950s output, and even Sam Peckinpah could be seen incorporating the pure elements of a traditional Western in his movies. Martin Scorsese found his vintage source of inspiration in the lavish MGM musicals of the 1940s. Not surprising considering the influence music has in his productions. Starring Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli, New York, New York was a nightmare production with a capital N. Shooting started without a complete script. Scorsese was undergoing marital problems, and on top of that, he started an affair with the then-married Liza Minnelli. The two leads from distinct acting backgrounds clashed multiple times, and the exuberance and scale of the movie pushed the budget to $14 million, more than 3 times the cumulative budgets of Scorsese's past 3 movies. The troubled production found a director who wasn't sure of his talents. The lack of self-confidence and overwhelmed resulted in a self-destructive cocaine habit. When New York, New York was finally released in June 1977, it was a box office failure and barely made back its initial budget of $14 million. Destroyed by the critics and disregarded by audiences, the reception drove Scorsese deeper into depression and drug abuse. Whilst attending the Telluride Film Festival in 1978, Scorsese blacked out and ended up in the hospital, with his life hanging by a thread. His frequent collaborator Robert De Niro visited him during his recovery, bearing 2 gifts: a tough love message and a proposal for their next collaboration, Raging Bull.
I know I'd go from rags to riches if you would only.
Martin Scorsese had passed on Raging Bull multiple times since Robert De Niro first showed the director the book Raging Bull: My Story in 1974. But 4 years later, he was ready to depend on his friend and collaborator to save not only his life, but also his career. In many ways, Raging Bull would be a make-or-break project for the iconic director. He was no longer sure he wanted to be a filmmaker, but one way or another, he had a lot riding on the boxing biopic. If he were to continue making movies, he needed a hit that would show the money man that, when it came to his filmography, New York, New York's demise had been an exception and not the rule. Should he choose to call it quits, he wanted a proper swan song and the perfect bookend to what would be a short-lived career that started with the iconic Mean Streets just 7 years before. In Raging Bull, we follow the turbulent life of boxer Jake LaMotta. We witness LaMotta's rise through the ranks of the boxing world and his struggles with his inner demons, including jealousy and paranoia, which ultimately lead to his downfall of both his professional and personal life. The movie explores his tumultuous relationships with his wife Vicky, played by Kathy Moriarty, and his brother Joey, played by Joe Pesci, which further contribute to his self-destructive behavior. Despite his success in the ring, LaMotta's violent and erratic behavior ultimately leads to his isolation and downfall. But even when fighting, his refusal to cooperate with organized crime, a core shadow presence in the boxing world at the time, stood as a barrier to success. What can I say about this movie that hasn't been said before? Raging Bull is a magnificent movie and a one-of-a-kind biopic, released at a time when biopic tropes were already well established and dragging down most titles within the genre. The film's uniqueness results from the combination of De Niro's stellar performance, Thelma Schoonmaker's fantastic editing, and Michael Chapman's iconic cinematography, topped with the secret ingredient, Martin Scorsese's passion. Because to watch Raging Bull is to understand how the director felt at the time. Granted, the asthmatic 5'4" artist would never set foot in an actual ring. But Jake LaMotta's journey of self-destruction and desire for redemption mirrors Scorsese's life post-Taxi Driver. Like the boxer, the Italian-American filmmaker also displayed an uncompromising nature, which of course did not sit well with many. The lives of these icons were also impacted by that double-edged sword known as fame, which brought both adulation and destruction. So by making Raging Bull at this point in his career, Martin Scorsese was exorcising his demons by confronting them headfirst in a ring he was very familiar with, the big screen. For Scorsese, finishing Raging Bull was the equivalent of a knockout victory. But would audiences and critics see it that way? You'll have to wait for the next episode to find out.